The council chamber on Tel-Aviv buzzed with excited chatter as War Marshal Drevnik uploaded the intelligence files to the central display. Holographic images of a blue planet rotated above the assembled leaders, showing continents and oceans that reminded several species of their own homeworlds. The planet looked peaceful, almost inviting. "Counselors, I present Earth," Drevnik announced, his four arms gesturing toward the display with practiced authority. "Third planet in a system these beings call Sol. Population, 11 billion. Technology level, primitive. They have barely left their own star system." A Palian representative leaned forward, her crystalline features catching the light. "What military capability do they possess?" Drevnik's mouth parts clicked in what his species considered laughter. "They still use chemical propulsion for most spacecraft. Their weapons are laughable. Kinetic projectiles that use explosive powder. Some crude atomic devices, but nothing that could threaten even our oldest defense systems." The Vren delegate, a massive creature covered in thick scales, rumbled deep in his chest. "Then why bring this to the full council? Such a species should simply accept annexation." "Exactly my assessment," Drevnik agreed. "However, protocol requires council approval for first contact with any species capable of splitting the atom. A formality, nothing more. I propose we offer standard terms. Join the coalition, accept our guidance, provide resources and labor in exchange for protection and technology." The vote took less than 10 minutes. Unanimous approval for annexation. The humans would be contacted, given the standard 24-hour consideration period, and then integrated into the coalition whether they agreed or not. It had worked this way for 300 years across 47 species. None had refused. Drevnik selected Commander Helith to lead the contact mission. 50 warships, more than enough to intimidate any primitive species into compliance. The fleet arrived at humanity's furthest outpost 3 weeks later. Proxima Station hung in the darkness, a spinning wheel of metal and glass housing 50,000 souls, miners mostly with their families, children playing in the recreation sections, farmers tending hydroponic gardens, scientists studying the red dwarf star that gave the station its name. Administrator Robert Hayes received the coalition transmission in his office, a cramped space filled with family photos and children's drawings. His daughter had made him a birthday card just yesterday. It showed him as a superhero, protecting the station. He smiled sadly at it as he read the surrender terms. 24 hours to evacuate or submit to annexation. All resources to become coalition property. All humans to accept subservient status in the new order. Hayes read it 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. He called an emergency meeting with the station council. The vote was quick and angry. They would not surrender. This was their home. They had built it with their own hands, raised their children here, buried their dead in the small memorial garden near the hub. Hayes composed a response, keeping it simple and direct. "We respectfully decline your offer. This station is sovereign human territory. We ask that you leave our space immediately." Commander Helith received the message with disbelief. In 300 years, no species had ever refused. He contacted Drevnik for guidance. "They refuse," Drevnik's voice carried across the light years with obvious shock. "Impossible. They cannot possibly think they can resist." "What are your orders, War Marshal?" A long pause followed. Then Drevnik's voice came back, colder now. "Demonstrate our resolve. Destroy their communications array. Show them we are serious. Give them another 12 hours to reconsider." Helith targeted the communications array with a precision plasma burst. The structure vaporized in seconds, but Hayes had already begun evacuating civilians to the emergency shuttles. Women and children first, the old human protocol. They managed to get 6,000 people away before Helith lost patience. "They are not surrendering," Helith reported. "They are fleeing." "Then make them stop," Drevnik ordered. Target the station's residential sections. Controlled strikes, enough to force surrender. The first plasma bolt punched through the outer hull of Section 7. Atmosphere vented into space, taking 300 people with it. The second bolt hit the school section. 400 children died instantly, their bodies never recovered. Hayes stood in the command center watching the casualty reports climb. 12,000 dead, 15,000, 20,000. His daughter was in Section 12. Section 12 no longer existed. He activated the emergency broadcast system, sending a wide-spectrum signal to every human ship, station, and settlement in known space. The message was simple: footage of the attack, names of the dead, and a final statement. They came in peace, they said. They offered us protection, they said. They murdered our children when we said no. Remember Proxima. Remember what they are. Remember what they did. Hayes died when Section 3 collapsed, crushed by falling debris while helping injured miners reach the escape pods. 12,000 people survived. 38,000 did not. Commander Helith reported complete pacification of the station to Drevnik. The humans will surely surrender now. We have demonstrated our overwhelming power. On Tel-Aviv, Drevnik prepared the annexation documents and waited for Earth's capitulation. It never came. Instead, every human government, corporation, mining operation, and colony went silent. Total communications blackout. Not a single transmission left human space for 3 days. Drevnik interpreted this as shock and grief. The humans were processing their loss, preparing surrender documents. He told the council that integration would begin within the week. On Earth, the silence meant something else entirely. Every factory was being retooled, every shipyard working triple shifts, every able-bodied human joining military training, every government, every corporation, every faction that had competed and fought for centuries was now unified behind a single purpose. The silence broke on the 4th day with a single transmission from Earth. No diplomacy, no threats, just 6 words that would echo through galactic history. You wanted war, now you have it. Drevnik heard those words and laughed. What could these primitives possibly do against the might of the coalition? They had no fleet, no weapons that could threaten even a single warship, no understanding of modern warfare. He had no idea that humanity had spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare, not against aliens, but against themselves. Every innovation, every tactic, every brutal lesson learned in blood across countless battlefields. The coalition was about to receive an education in what war truly meant. And somewhere in the debris field where Proxima Station once stood, the bodies of 38,000 humans drifted in the darkness, silent witnesses to the terrible mistake the coalition had made. Dr. Rennick's claws clicked nervously across the data pad as he reviewed the captured human files. The Palian xenopsychologist had requested access to humanity's historical records, hoping to understand the enemy better. What he found made his crystalline body structure vibrate with horror. The images showed battlefields from human history, trenches filled with bodies, cities reduced to rubble, weapons that made coalition technology look merciful by comparison. One document described something called the Psalm, where humans killed each other by the hundreds of thousands over a few kilometers of mud. They did this to themselves, Rennick whispered, his voice crystallizing in the cold archive room. These numbers cannot be correct. But they were correct. World War I, 17 million dead. World War II, 70 million dead. The humans had industrialized murder, created factories whose sole purpose was producing tools to kill other humans more efficiently. Rennick drafted an urgent report to the High Council, but before he could send it, alarms shrieked through the research station. Human ships had been detected entering coalition space. 3 months had passed since Proxima Station. The coalition expected negotiators, perhaps a surrender delegation. Instead, Sensors showed dozens of vessels emerging from FTL across 6 different systems simultaneously. Intelligence Officer Varth studied the approaching ships with confusion. These are not warships. We are detecting colony transports, mining haulers, even civilian pleasure craft. Then what threat do they pose? His commander asked. The answer came when the first human vessel entered weapons range. It was indeed a colony ship, but humans had welded armor plating to its hull and mounted massive railguns along its flanks. The ship accelerated directly toward the Coalition defensive line with no attempt at evasion. Coalition ships opened fire, ripping the human vessel apart. But it kept coming, engines screaming, until it rammed a Coalition cruiser. Both ships exploded in a ball of nuclear fire. Insanity, Varth breathed. They sacrificed an entire crew for one ship. But it was not one ship. 17 more human vessels made similar attacks across the system, trading their lives for Coalition vessels in brutal exchanges. The Coalition won the battle, destroying every human ship, but lost 40% of their defensive fleet doing it. Commander Helith reviewed the battle reports with growing unease. They are not fighting like any species we have encountered. No retreat, no surrender. Every ship fights until complete destruction. The humans had learned from their first encounters with Coalition technology. Captured ships were torn apart, studied, reverse-engineered. Within weeks, human vessels began appearing with stolen shield generators and modified weapons systems. More disturbing were the innovations humanity brought to warfare that the Coalition had never considered. At Rigel VII, humans deployed kinetic weapons that used captured FTL drives to accelerate asteroids to impossible speeds. The resulting impact destroyed an entire shipyard and everyone in it. Coalition commanders began filing reports about human psychological warfare, broadcasts that exploited Coalition cultural taboos, images designed to horrify specific species. The humans had studied their enemies and created customized nightmares for each. War Marshal Drevnik read these reports with growing anger. They are primitives. How are they adapting so quickly? Dr. Rennick finally managed to send his research to the Council. Because they have been preparing for this their entire existence. Every human child studies military history. They learn about tactical defeats and victories from thousands of years of warfare. They practice war the way we practice art. The Coalition deployed their newest battleship, the Pride of Talais, to crush human resistance. The vessel mounted weapons that could sterilize planets, shields that had never been breached. It was accompanied by an entire battle group, 200 ships strong. The humans met them at the Kepler Nebula with a fleet half that size. The battle should have been a massacre. It was, but not the way Coalition commanders expected. Human ships fought in ways that violated every tactical doctrine the Coalition knew. They used false retreats, drawing Coalition vessels into ambush zones. They deployed drones programmed with erratic flight patterns that confused targeting systems. They sacrificed smaller ships to create debris fields that larger Coalition vessels had to navigate slowly. When the Pride of Talais destroyed a human destroyer, the escape pods did not flee. Instead, they accelerated toward the Coalition flagship and attached themselves to the hull. Human soldiers in combat armor cut through the outer plating and entered the ship. The boarding action was brutal. Humans moved through the corridors in small teams, using weapons designed for close combat. They sabotaged critical systems, killed key personnel, and when Coalition Marines finally cornered them, detonated explosives that tore through 3 decks. The Pride of Talais survived but was crippled. As it limped away, human vessels pursued, harrying it with hit-and-run attacks until it finally lost power and was abandoned. Drevnik watched the footage of the battle and saw something that shook him to his core. Human soldiers had painted messages on the hull of the Pride of Talais before it was destroyed. Simple words in their primitive language. For Proxima, the casualty reports arrived daily now. 15 million human soldiers dead in 3 months of fighting. Earth's response was not grief or calls for peace. Instead, every broadcast from human space showed recruitment centers overflowing with volunteers. Coalition analysts estimated that 8% of humanity's total population was now in military service. The percentage was still climbing. Humans were accepting rationing, reduced living standards, total industrial mobilization. They had transformed their entire civilization into a war machine. Dr. Rennick sent another report to the council, his final warning before he resigned his position in despair. We are not fighting a military. We are fighting a species that has made warfare its primary cultural expression. They have words in their languages for warrior virtues that we cannot even translate. They tell stories to their children about glorious last stands. They build monuments to their military dead and teach each generation to honor sacrifice in battle. The report concluded with a simple statement. We made a mistake at Proxima Station. We believed showing force would make them surrender. Instead, we gave them a reason to fight. And humanity with a reason to fight is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. Drevnik deleted the report without reading it. The Coalition had never lost a war. They would not start now. The agricultural world of Denebivi had never seen war. Rolling fields of golden grain stretched to every horizon, feeding 17 Coalition worlds. The farmers were peaceful Vren, a species that had abandoned warfare 3,000 years ago in favor of cultivation and growth. They watched in confusion as human warships entered orbit. Surely the humans would not attack a farming world. There was no military value here, no strategic importance. Just crops and the families who tended them. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking down at the planet below. Her face was carved from stone, emotions buried deep where they could not interfere with duty. She had lost her husband at Proxima Station. He had been a teacher there, helping children learn mathematics. "Begin Operation Ash Rain," she ordered. The Vren farmers saw the weapons platforms descend from the sky. Not troops for occupation, not bombs for military targets. Instead, automated systems that moved across the fields like mechanical locusts, burning everything they touched. Grain silos exploded. Irrigation systems were systematically destroyed. Chemical weapons poisoned the soil, rendering it sterile for decades. Water treatment facilities collapsed under focused bombardment. The humans were not conquering Denebivi. They were erasing its ability to sustain life. Coalition forces scrambled to respond, but the attack was happening simultaneously across 12 agricultural worlds. Human battle groups engaged any defensive fleet that tried to intervene, fighting with the same suicidal intensity they had shown since the war began. Within 48 hours, Denebivi and 11 other worlds faced complete agricultural collapse. Millions of Coalition civilians would starve within months. The Coalition High Council convened in emergency session, their outrage transmitted across all frequencies. "This is barbarism," the Palian representative declared. These worlds had no military presence. They were feeding populations, not armies. Humanity's response was broadcast within the hour. It showed footage from Proxima Station, children's bodies floating in space, families torn apart by plasma fire, the names and faces of every single person killed scrolling for hours. Then Admiral Tanaka appeared on screen, her voice steady and cold. "You killed our civilians first. You murdered our children to make a point. Now you understand the price. Surrender, or every world that feeds your people will burn. We will not stop until you beg us to accept your capitulation." The message terrified the Coalition, not because of the threat but because of what it revealed about human warfare. The Coalition fought for territory, for resources, for political advantage. Humans fought for revenge, and they were willing to starve billions to achieve it. War Marshal Drevnik watched the broadcasts and felt something he had never experienced before: fear. He ordered the fortress world of Haller Prime reinforced. If the humans wanted a target that would break them, let them try the most heavily defended planet in Coalition space. Haller Prime orbited a binary star system, its location kept secret from most Coalition species. Planetary shields that could withstand sustained bombardment for years. 6 defensive fleets in constant rotation. Underground bunkers housing 4 billion civilians and the Coalition's entire military command structure. Drevnik moved his headquarters there, confident that if the humans attacked, they would shatter themselves against its defenses. He broadcast a challenge, daring the humans to come. They came, but not the way he expected. Human ships arrived at the edge of the system and immediately began retreating when Coalition fleets moved to engage. For 3 weeks, they played this game, drawing Coalition forces away from the planet and then vanishing into FTL. Coalition commanders assumed the humans were probing defenses, looking for weaknesses. They were wrong. On the 23rd day, sensors detected a massive object emerging from FTL near Haller Prime. Not a warship. An asteroid, 3 kilometers across, captured from the system's outer belt. The humans had attached crude engines to it and aimed it at the planet. The impact trajectory was perfect. Without intervention, the asteroid would strike Haller Prime's northern continent in 72 hours. The planetary shields could stop it, but the energy required would drain the generators for weeks, leaving the planet vulnerable. Drevnik ordered the defensive fleets to destroy the asteroid. Human warships appeared the moment Coalition vessels moved to intercept, engaging them in brutal combat that prevented any ship from getting a clear shot at the incoming rock. Then humanity broadcast an offer. They would divert the asteroid. All Coalition had to do was evacuate the planet within the 72-hour window. Prove that civilian lives mattered more than pride. Drevnik refused. It was clearly a bluff. The humans would not actually drop an asteroid on a populated world. It would violate every civilized standard of warfare. It would kill billions of civilians, including millions of children. The countdown continued. 60 hours, 48 hours, 24 hours. Human ships maintained their blockade, preventing any vessel from approaching the asteroid. Coalition engineers worked desperately to boost shield power. At hour 71, Drevnik received a personal message from Admiral Tanaka. It contained a single file from human history, information about something called Hiroshima and Nagasaki, cities where humans had used atomic weapons on their own species to end a war. "We have done worse to ourselves," Tanaka's message stated. "Do you really think we will hesitate to do it to you?" Drevnik finally understood. He ordered evacuation, but there was not enough time. Ships fled the planet carrying 2 billion people. 2 billion more remained, unable to reach escape vessels in time. The asteroid hit the northern continent traveling at 40,000 kilometers per hour. The impact released energy equivalent to 5 billion tons of explosives. The shockwave circled the planet 3 times. Tsunamis thousands of meters high erased coastal cities. The atmosphere ignited, burning everything that had survived the initial impact. When the dust cleared, Haller Prime was a graveyard. Drevnik watched from his flagship as the planet's surface glowed red with heat. 4 billion souls reduced to ash, just as the humans had promised. Humanity broadcast the footage across every Coalition world, accompanied by a simple message. Your War Marshal chose this. He could have saved them. He chose pride over their lives. How many more will die for his pride? 3 Coalition species immediately sued for peace. Drevnik had them executed for cowardice, but the damage was done. The Coalition was fracturing. The Grand Armada assembled at the edge of Coalition space represented 70% of their remaining military power. 3,000 warships from a dozen species, all united under one purpose: crush humanity at its source and end this war. War Marshal Drevnik addressed his commanders via holographic link, his four arms spread wide in a gesture of absolute confidence. Earth stands alone and primitive. We have allowed these creatures to fight us in the outer systems, where their guerrilla tactics give them advantage. But their homeworld has no place to hide, no room for their cowardly ambushes. We will break them on their own soil and teach the galaxy what happens to species that defy the coalition. The fleet entered the Sol system in battle formation, weapons charged and shields at maximum. Sensors showed Earth ahead, blue and green and impossibly fragile-looking. No defensive fleet waited in orbit. The humans had apparently retreated to their planet's surface for a final stand. It was a trap. The asteroid belt erupted with weapons fire. Thousands of kinetic projectiles, each one a simple rock accelerated to incredible speeds by human-built mass drivers. The barrage was crude but effective. 200 coalition ships exploded before they even knew they were under attack. Jupiter's moons lit up with railgun batteries, massive weapons that fired 1,000-ton slugs across the system with terrifying accuracy. Saturn's rings hid automated hunter-killer drones that swarmed coalition vessels, latching onto hulls and detonating. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a fortress, and the coalition fleet was already inside it. Commander Vorth watched his tactical display fill with red warning symbols. They have weaponized everything. Even the ice fragments from Saturn's rings are tracked and controlled. This entire system is a kill zone. The coalition fleet pressed forward, taking horrendous casualties but pushing through sheer numbers. They reached Mars orbit having lost 400 ships. Earth's defensive fleet finally appeared. The human warships were smaller than coalition vessels, newer designs that bore no resemblance to the retrofitted civilian craft from earlier in the war. Each one was built for a single purpose: make the enemy pay in blood for every meter of space. Coalition ships were superior in every measurable way. Better shields, better weapons, better armor. But humans had learned something during their millennia of warfare against each other. Technical superiority means nothing if you are willing to trade your life to inflict damage. When a human destroyer was disabled, its crew did not abandon ship. Instead, they overcharged the reactor and rammed the nearest coalition cruiser. Both ships died, but the exchange rate favored humanity. One small destroyer for one heavy cruiser was a trade humans made gladly. Coalition boarding parties that managed to capture human vessels found them rigged with explosives. Entire sections would detonate when enemies entered, killing both the boarders and any remaining human crew. The humans called it scorched earth. Leave nothing for the enemy to use. Admiral Vorth began to understand the nightmare they faced. They are not trying to win this battle. They are trying to make victory cost more than we can afford. The coalition fleet forced its way to Earth orbit, but landing craft found every approach contested. Human fighters swarmed the dropships, pilots flying with suicidal aggression. Many simply crashed into coalition vessels when their weapons ran dry. Ground forces finally reached Earth's surface in North America, expecting the population to flee or surrender. Instead, they found cities transformed into fortresses. Every building was a bunker. Every street was a killing zone. Every civilian was armed and trained. The coalition had never encountered anything like urban warfare against a determined population. Their superior technology meant little in close-quarters combat. Human soldiers knew their cities intimately, using tunnels and sewers to move unseen. They employed weapons designed specifically for building-to-building fighting. Worse, there seemed to be no non-combatants in human society. Elderly humans fired from windows. Children ran messages between defensive positions. Medical personnel treated wounded soldiers while armed and ready to fight. The entire population was mobilized for war. Coalition psychologists studied captured humans, trying to understand their mindset. What they found was disturbing. Humans were taught from childhood about glorious last stands throughout their history. Places called Thermopylae and Stalingrad and the Alamo were revered in human culture. One captured human soldier wounded and awaiting medical treatment explained it simply. "You cannot break us. Our ancestors fought each other for 10,000 years. We learned to survive everything. Cold that would kill your species, heat that would boil your blood, diseases that ravage entire populations. We adapted, we survived, and we never ever surrender when we are protecting our home." The coalition captured a human military academy in Asia. Files found there revealed the depth of humanity's preparation for war. Every student studied the art of warfare from ancient times to present day. Tactical defeats were analyzed in detail, so the same mistakes would never be repeated. Victories were dissected to understand what made them successful. But most disturbing was the emphasis on sacrifice. Humans taught their children that dying in defense of home and family was the highest honor. They romanticized battlefield death in art, literature, music. Thousands of years of culture reinforcing the idea that some things were worth dying for. Coalition forces controlled 12% of Earth's surface after 4 months of brutal combat. They had lost 85% of the invasion force. Every city they took was one block by block, building by building, room by room, and the humans never stopped fighting. In the ruins of New York, coalition troops found a makeshift memorial. Names of dead human soldiers carved into broken concrete. Beneath them, a phrase in English that their translators struggled to process: "They shall not pass." War Marshal Drevnik watched the casualty reports climb and finally accepted the truth. Earth could not be conquered. The coalition might eventually occupy the entire planet, but it would cost them every soldier they had, and the humans would still be fighting from the rubble. He ordered full retreat. The Grand Armada, reduced to less than 1,000 functional ships, limped out of the Sol system. Behind them, damaged human vessels pursued, harrying them every step of the way. Humanity had defended its homeworld. Now it was time to take the war to coalition space. 1 year had passed since Proxima Station. The Coalition High Council met in an underground bunker on Teliziv, their confidence from a year ago replaced by barely concealed panic. The holographic display showed red markers spreading across coalition territory like a plague. War Marshal Drevnik stood before them, his 4 arms hanging limply at his sides in a gesture of defeat his species reserved for announcing disaster. 40 systems have fallen to human forces in the last 3 months, not occupied, fallen. The humans are not interested in holding territory. A Vren counselor spoke, his voice trembling. "Then what do they want?" "Revenge," Drevnik replied simply. "They have launched what they call the Long March, simultaneous offensives across our entire border, small fleets, highly mobile, striking and moving before we can respond. They are not trying to conquer the coalition. They are trying to dismantle it." The humans had evolved their tactics dramatically from the desperate battles a year ago. Now they fought with precision and terrible purpose. Every battle was studied, every loss analyzed, every tactic refined. More disturbing was how they had customized their warfare for each coalition species. Human intelligence had apparently spent the entire war studying their enemies, finding psychological and biological weaknesses to exploit. Against the Palians, whose crystalline bodies functioned through distributed consciousness, humans deployed sonic weapons tuned to disrupt their neural resonance. Palian hive minds fragmented into confused individuals who could not coordinate or think clearly. Against the Vren, whose warrior culture demanded honorable face-to-face combat, humans refused all formal engagement. They used only ambush tactics, remote weapons, orbital bombardment, never giving the Vren the glorious battle they craved, breaking their morale instead of their bodies. Against the silicoids, whose crystalline intelligence operated on pure logic, humans introduced chaos algorithms into captured computer systems. Then they returned the infected ships. The virus spread through silicoid networks, introducing random variables into every calculation until their technology became unreliable. Coalition military analysts reviewed these tactics with growing horror. They have studied us, learned our weaknesses, created specific nightmares designed to break each species. This level of psychological warfare should not be possible. But humans had practiced these techniques on themselves for thousands of years. Every tribal conflict, every religious war, every political revolution had taught them how to break an enemy's will to fight. The economic strain was crushing the coalition. Human forces targeted infrastructure specifically, not military bases but the supply chains that fed them. Shipping lanes were mined, fuel depots destroyed, manufacturing centers burned. Meanwhile, Earth and its colonies operated on full war economy. 30% of humanity's population worked in military manufacturing. Living standards had dropped dramatically. Rationing was universal. Every resource was directed toward the war effort. Coalition species demanded their governments negotiate peace. They were unwilling to accept the sacrifices that total war required. Their populations rioted when asked to accept rationing. Their corporations refused to convert facilities to military production. Drevnik saw the coalition fracturing in real time. They have unity. We have diversity. In peacetime, that diversity made us strong. In total war, it is killing us. Human forces reached the ruins of Proxima Station in the second year of war. Admiral Tanaka ordered a full ceremony for the dead. Every human ship in the sector assembled around the debris field. Names of the 38,000 victims were read aloud over open channels, each one followed by a moment of silence. Then they erected a monument, a massive structure built from the salvaged remains of the station itself. The inscription was simple: "They struck first, we will strike last." From Proxima, human fleets pushed deeper into coalition space, not seeking surrender, not offering peace, simply advancing system by system, breaking everything the coalition had built. 5 coalition species negotiated separate peace treaties with humanity. Drevnik ordered them all executed for treason, but the precedent was set. The coalition's unity, its greatest strength for 300 years, was collapsing. The Palian people revolted against their government, refusing to send more soldiers to fight a war that seemed endless. Human broadcasts had been carefully targeted at Palian population centers, showing the horrors of war and asking why they continued fighting for leaders who started it. The Vren military split into factions, some demanding honorable surrender, others wanting to fight to the last warrior. Their home fleet engaged in civil war, destroying itself while human forces watched from a distance. Only 3 species remained fully committed to the coalition: the Tailais, the original founders, along with 2 client species whose economies were completely dependent on coalition support. Drevnik gathered what remained of the coalition fleet for one final defensive stand. 2,000 ships, all that remained of the once mighty armada. They fortified the approaches to Tailais, determined to protect the homeworld at any cost. Human forces arrived with half that number of vessels, but the battle never happened. Instead, humans broadcast a final offer to every coalition world simultaneously. The transmission showed footage from Proxima Station one more time. Then it showed a counter running on the screen. Coalition military casualties, 89 million. Coalition civilian casualties, 4 billion. Human casualties, 112 million total. "We have paid for our defense in blood," Admiral Tanaka's voice stated. "You have paid for your aggression. The price is equal now. We offer one final chance for peace. Surrender, face war crimes trials, pay reparations, accept permanent demilitarization, or we continue until your civilization is ash. The alternative was stark. Human forces had positioned around Telizavi, not to invade, but to demonstrate their newest weapon. They selected an uninhabited moon in the system and subjected it to what they called complete sterilization protocol. The bombardment lasted 40 hours. Kinetic weapons, nuclear weapons, biological agents, chemical weapons. Everything humanity had developed over 10,000 years of warfare, unleashed on a single target. When they finished, the moon's surface was glass, glowing red with heat. The message was clear: this moon or your homeworld, Drevnik decides. The fate of the coalition hung on one being's choice: continue fighting and watch his people burn, or surrender and face justice. Drevnik stood alone in the High Council chamber on Telizavi, watching human warships descend through the atmosphere. The other counselors had fled weeks ago, abandoning their posts and their people in hopes of finding sanctuary somewhere in the galaxy. There was no sanctuary from humanity's reach. The War Marshal had chosen to remain. He would witness what he had created when he ordered the destruction of Proxima Station 18 months ago, a lifetime ago in some ways, an instant in others. His personal terminal displayed the countdown timer humanity had provided. 23 hours until they demonstrated their sterilization protocol on Telizavi unless he surrendered. He had watched the footage of that moon dying, seen the surface burn and melt and turn to glass. 4 billion people lived on this world, his world. Drevnik accessed human historical files one final time, trying to understand the species that had defeated the coalition. The information was all there, had always been there, but he had been too arrogant to look. Humans had fought each other for 10,000 years before reaching space. Every innovation in their society was matched by innovations in warfare. They split the atom and immediately built bombs. They developed computers and instantly used them for weapons guidance. They reached space and began planning how to fight wars beyond their atmosphere. One file stood out: a human city called Hiroshima. The humans had dropped an atomic weapon on their own people to end a war. Drevnik zoomed in on the casualty figures: 200,000 dead in an instant. The humans had done this to themselves. Another file showed something called the Eastern Front, where humans killed each other by the millions over frozen wastelands. They besieged their own cities, allowing their own people to starve rather than surrender. A city called Leningrad held out for 900 days while 1 million civilians died. "We never had a chance," Drevnik said to the empty chamber. "They have practiced total war for their entire existence. We have not fought a real war in 300 years. The timer continued its countdown: 22 hours, 21 hours, 20 hours. Coalition military analysis scrolled across another screen. The final reports from commanders who had fought humanity and survived. All said the same thing in different ways. Humans do not fight wars to claim territory or resources. They fight wars to break their enemy's will to continue fighting. Every tactic humanity employed was designed for maximum psychological impact. The asteroid dropped on Haller Prime could have been stopped, but humans forced Drevnik to make an impossible choice: save the planet or maintain the blockade. Either way, he lost. The agricultural worlds could have been occupied, but humans chose to burn them instead. Send a message: we will starve your populations if you do not surrender. Make the war too expensive to continue. At 19 hours, Drevnik received a personal message from Admiral Tanaka. It contained no threats, no demands, just a question. "War Marshal Drevnik, I have reviewed your military record. You are not a fool, despite your actions at Proxima Station. So I ask you directly, what were you thinking? Did you believe that murdering 38,000 civilians would make humanity surrender? Did you not consider that we might respond?" Drevnik composed a reply, knowing it might be his last communication as a free being. I believed you were primitives who would be awed by our power. I believed one demonstration of force would make you accept coalition guidance. I was wrong. I did not understand that you were already practicing warfare when my species was still learning to use tools. Tanaka's response came quickly. You are correct. You did not understand, but understanding now will not save you. It will only allow you to make an informed choice. Surrender and face justice or die with your world. You have 18 hours. The countdown continued. 17 hours, 16 hours, 15 hours. Drevnik accessed the public networks, watching broadcasts from coalition worlds, riots in major cities, governments collapsing. Species that had been part of the coalition for centuries were declaring independence and begging humanity for mercy. One broadcast showed a Palian mother holding her child, pleading with Drevnik to surrender. Do not let pride kill us all. The war is over. We lost. Accept this and let us live. Hundreds of thousands of similar messages flooded the networks, his own people begging him to give up. At 10 hours, Drevnik made his decision. He composed a formal surrender document and transmitted it to the human fleet. Unconditional capitulation, war crimes trials, reparations, permanent demilitarization, everything humanity demanded. The human response was immediate. The countdown stopped at 9 hours and 43 minutes. Human occupation forces landed on Telizevi the next day. Drevnik expected brutality, expected the humans to inflict on the coalition what the coalition had tried to inflict on them. Instead, human soldiers distributed food and medical supplies. They repaired damaged infrastructure. They protected coalition civilians from reprisal attacks. Drevnik, awaiting trial in a cell, asked his human guard why they showed mercy. The guard, a young woman who had lost her family at Proxima Station, looked at him with eyes that had seen too much death. Because we are not you, she said. We fight total war when we must, but we do not enjoy it. We do not celebrate destruction. We wanted you to stop fighting. You have stopped. Now we can stop. 5 years passed. Proxima Station was rebuilt as a memorial and military academy. The first graduating class included both humans and coalition species. Learning combined history so the mistakes of the past would never repeat. The memorial wall listed every name from the original massacre. Beneath them, an inscription that became famous across the galaxy. They asked for war. We delivered. Never again. Human merchants now traded freely with former coalition worlds. Human technology helped rebuild what the war destroyed. The galaxy learned that humanity's capacity for total war was matched by their capacity for total peace. But every species remembered the lesson. Humanity had reduced coalition worlds to ash when provoked. They had proven they could do it again if necessary. The most dangerous predator was one that chose mercy from a position of absolute strength. Peace reigned in the galaxy, maintained not by laws or treaties, but by the simple understanding that humanity had perfected both war and peace, and the galaxy would never again make them choose between them.